It's called the law of divine order. This idea originated with this wonderful metaphysical writer back in the 1930s and 40s that some of you may be familiar with. Her name is Florence Scovel Shinn, and she wrote a book which is one of my all-time favorite books called The Game of Life. And she really just did the most practical rule book for how to work with your mind and get it to chill out and get it to act in harmony with God so that all the highest potentials that need to happen for you can happen without your mind getting in the way. So I really recommend this book, The Game of Life, if you've never read it. Anyway, she writes about this idea called the law of divine order. And basically, it's exactly what it sounds like. It's this idea that everything in the universe wants to follow a natural order which is divine. That there's sort of a perfect, orchestrated unfolding for every event. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that things always go that way, but she would probably argue that when things don't follow divine order, it's because we get in the way with all of our worries and our fears and our messing around and make things much more complicated than they need to be. So following the law of divine order doesn't mean passivity, like you just kind of lay back and go, oh, it's all in God's hands, I don't have to do anything. But it does mean that you're invoking this idea that divine order will come into whatever situation you're worried about. And you do this like an absolute invitation. I'll give you an example. I was giving a reading to a woman in France who was calling me from Paris, and she was in this horrible divorce. Just complete mess with this guy. And it was very ugly. They were fighting all the time. Financially, it was a mess. And she was a complete nervous wreck. So I suggested to her that every day for 21 days, because a lot of you are familiar with this idea that if you want to bring a change into your life, do it for 21 days in order to create the new pattern for the neurons in the brain. So I said, for 21 days, begin to say, let divine order come into this divorce. Let divine order come into this divorce. And as you say this, you're really saying, let me be taken care of, let this guy be taken care of, let the children be taken care of, let the finances be taken care of, let the lawyers be taken care of, whoever's touched by this situation. Let divine order come into every angle of the situation so it unfolds exactly as it needs to with divine perfection. It's such a simple thing to do that you would think, wow, how could that work? That's just so basic. All you're saying is let divine order come into the situation. But it is amazing how powerful this statement is, especially when you say it with complete conviction. Hey, what do you have to lose? Usually you're not going to start saying this statement unless you're really in some mess that you're not handling too well through your own devices or through the machinations of the ego, right? So you have nothing to lose. So you go, let divine order come into this situation. And you know what happened to this woman in Paris with the divorce? It was amazing. She called me actually with a series of updates that started about 2 weeks into her saying this. So, the first few days she said it, nothing happened. But after about 2 weeks, very odd things happened. Like all of a sudden, her soon-to-be ex-husband became willing to negotiate with her, which he had no desire to do before. And, of course, part of this was happening was because as a result of saying, let divine order come into this situation, something happened inside her and she stopped just inundating this man with hatred. Now, I don't want to get into whether she should hate him or not. I'm just saying she was able to drop the hatred, and because of that, he stopped feeling that vibration come at him, and he became willing to negotiate with her. So whole things got settled out of court. They were looking at huge court battle, just dropped away. They brought in a mediator. All kinds of stuff got settled out of court. The kids got taken care of. They got equal custody. It was a miracle. And she just kept saying over and over as she got me different updates over about the next 6 weeks, it's a miracle. This guy was such, I can't figure out why he's willing to meet me halfway. So divine order had just worked its magic. And one of the things that happened for her by inviting divine order into the situation was that she stopped fighting delays. I think that's something that a lot of us do. It's like we think something should be unfolding at a certain pace, and then we'll get really frustrated, and so we go and we bang our head against a brick wall for a little bit until we get a concussion, and then we realize, oh, that's actually not speeding up the process, and then finally we let go. Well, when you invite divine order into a situation, you're basically saying, I'm taking my hands off of this. I'm no longer telling the universe the pace this needs to happen at. I'm no longer even telling the universe how it has to be resolved. I'm simply saying divine perfection, divine order will infuse this entire situation with healing and clarity. And then you're just handing it over, saying, show me the actions to take. Because remember, divine order, invoking divine order, isn't about passivity. You may get shown quite a few things to do. Although with this woman, a lot of the French woman, a lot of her invoking divine order involved what she had to stop doing, like calling him up and leaving screaming messages on his phone and, this and that. As soon as she started invoking divine order, all that stopped. And she actually became very quiet. And then the situation started to change. Now, in some other case, invoking divine order, you may get all of a sudden, oh, this sense, hey, I need to take this action, that action, the next action. That could be very appropriate. So you never know what this invocation of calling for divine order will do. That kind of is what makes it exciting. In some situations it might make you quite passive. In other situations it might lead you to a lot of actions where you're very courageous. You're doing things you never believed you could do because that force of divinity is guiding you. Because you've said, hey, I'm ready, I'm desperate, whatever you're saying, let divine order come into this. This invoking of divine order, it gives you the room to have whatever feelings you have about a situation. So I'm not trying to make it sound as if the French woman began to call for divine order and she wasn't angry sometimes at this guy. She was. It's almost like you give yourself the permission to feel whatever you're feeling, and yet this other energy comes in that begins to show you the way to go, begins to show you the actions to take. So your feelings are your feelings, and I think it's very healthy to have them. And yet, the actions begin to reveal themselves. And beyond even the actions for you to take, it begins to bring a healing into the entire situation. I could probably make this recording 5 hours long, just telling you situation after situation where divine order has, I've convinced somebody to call for divine order to come into whatever mess they're in, and the miracles that have happened from doing this. So you could see yourself as a deeply spiritual person doing this. You could see yourself as an absolute agnostic. Well, I'm not sure that an agnostic can be absolute, but whatever. It doesn't matter what your belief about a higher self is. This will work. even if you just have a sense that what you're doing is you're taking the mess of the situation and you're putting it into the hands of universal intelligence, of just that force of love which makes birds sing and the sunshine. Anything works, but you're calling for that divine order and perfection to enter the situation that you're in.